Hello and welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas. And today I have Anand. I closed your profile. Okay. Today I have Anand.
Rangathan.
Exactly. It's like you've done that before. Rangathan. And I usually make fun of myself for mispronouncing the last name. This time I think I mispronounced your entire name. So my apologies for that. I will blame it on, I didn't sleep very well last night.
No worries.
But thank you for being with me today. So Anand is the Chief AI Officer at Unscrambl. That's Unscrambl without the E at the end. So Anand, thank you for being here with me today. We met at ITC.
Yep.
ITC 2021 was quite the amazing experience. The great return to the in-person conferences, and I recorded 2 hours plus of interviews with different people. And you were one of the last. You were in the last day, so I was probably pretty beat up by then. But you stick in mind as one that was really interesting. So for the listeners, I think this will be a really interesting one. So Anand, what is Unscrambl and how does it play within insurance, or how can it play within insurance?
Sure. Yeah. So firstly, thanks, Tony, for inviting me. It's definitely good meeting you at ITC in Vegas, and definitely remember, your wacky outfit at Vegas as well. I got some props ready in case you had props too, but yeah, so Unscrambl, we're a startup in the business intelligence and analytics space. Our whole goal is to make it easy for non-technical business users in different enterprises, but especially the insurance industry. So make it easy for non-technical business users to get access to data and insights without having to go through lots of hoops. So our product allows people to ask questions of their data in plain English, their natural language. Behind the scenes, we will understand that natural language question, convert it into questions to any enterprise database, data warehouse, get back the answer, and show it in a meaningful fashion back to end users. So the whole goal is to drive data democratization, data adoption, data-driven decision-making within enterprises, where today business users might have to wait for days or sometimes weeks to get access to relevant data. We want to cut that down to seconds or minutes.
So I am very much a non-technical user, and I started college in computer science, and it turns out I can't do math, and it turns out if you can't do math, computer science is not a great career for you. So I graduated with a degree in business, in management information systems. So I do have some background in IT, but I've never worked in IT. And I'm very much a non-technical user, but I spent a year of my life at Nationwide. I went through their financial leadership rotation program. And during the finance program, one of the things that was really amazing to me, like we tend to think from the outside that reports just kind of magically happen, right? Like month end, quarterly end, and those are like very defined reports, right? What you're talking about is much like more ad hoc. But we tend to think that those reports just kind of like magically happen, or like they get designed once and then each month they like just run, right? And now, having gone through the finance function for a little bit, the reality is that yeah, some basic query exists, but it doesn't produce a final answer. It produces kind of a draft that then a finance or an accounting person actually works on to get you a final answer. That's why it takes a few days after the end of the month to get your information. So that was kind of mind-blowing to me, right? A report that's needed every month, and that is like a basic part of running the business, is not automatically generated in a large company. So I can only imagine when it comes to less structured data, and when it comes to more ad hoc things, how complex that is to get an answer.
Exactly.
So how did the idea for by the way, I love the name of Unscrambl, because that is exactly from my perspective as a non-technical user, that's exactly how the data feels. It feels scrambled and inaccessible to me, right? And I've never been a manager or like a leader in a business. My girlfriend is a pretty high level executive, um, and but many times I've had conversations with high level executives, and one of their chief complaints is how expensive it is to right when they put a request to IT or a request to finance or whatever for a report or whatever, it always ends up being expensive, and it takes a lot of time, especially if it's a new request. How did the idea come to create something like this that would unscramble it for non-technical users?
Yeah. So I've been in sort of the overall data analytics AI space for almost 20 years now. So that is sort of the area of my PhD, as well as area of my research when I was at IBM Research for almost 10 years. So I was involved in big data, natural language processing, streaming technologies, and several other later areas. And also worked with several customers and as part of either research engagements or actual project deliveries. So when I left IBM, along with some other colleagues of mine, we started this company with the goal of simplifying access to streaming data, which is a certain kind of real-time data. But as we kept talking to different companies, we just found that there were these fundamental problems, like you were saying, that people don't get access to even some basic reports quickly enough, especially when they are ad hoc reports, as I said. So when they are well-defined reports on a monthly basis, maybe companies have this practice down every month, they produce some reports, but very often those reports become a starting point for further analysis, saying, oh, what happened this month? Why is the revenue this month lower than last month? Why do you acquire fewer customers? Why was there more churn? And it becomes a series of questions that's often investigative in nature. And the only way we could actually solve the problem is to provide an interface where these business users can ask these questions as far as possible in an easy manner to get back the answer. So this idea, came about at an interesting intersection of different technology trends. So the past 3 or 4 years, a few things have happened. Firstly, lots of data is being collected and being stored in enterprise databases, data warehouses. Secondly, people are getting more familiar and used to chatting with virtual agents. So chatting with Alexa, with Siri, with Google. Third, people are also spending more and more time on collaboration platforms like Microsoft Teams and Zoom and Slack and others. So all those three things are coming together, and we realized about 3 years back that those three things coming together could provide a massive opportunity to allow people to access data and insights through natural language chat interfaces, especially within collaboration platforms like Slack and Microsoft Teams. So that's when we started, designing and building out this product. And over the past 3 years, we've sort of, gone through several iterations, gone through several pilots and proof of concepts, and now we're live in a few different enterprises where tens to hundreds of users keep asking questions of the data and get back answers in a collaborative fashion. So one of the neat things is that right now we're also integrated within Microsoft Teams, which I think a very large number of enterprises, especially in insurance, use. So in Teams, we have an app where once you install it, you can actually start chatting with Teams, with a bot in Teams. And that's start asking questions. So in the insurance page, you might ask questions like, how many policies are expiring next month? Which customers have in New York have a home insurance policy, but not an auto policy, and the home insurance policy is going to be expiring in the next month. So they could start asking these questions in English in the way I framed it, get back, and the system is going to understand these questions, get back the answers, and present it as charts, again, all within Microsoft Teams. And now because it's within Teams, they can now share with their colleagues and start commenting on it, and then finally, hopefully coming up with joint decisions that they can take going forward in a data-driven manner.
And how fast? So I remember when I was sales manager with Nationwide, I remember like having the idea, right? So oh, we should call on agents that I don't know that didn't buy a policy in the last month, right? Because like that, or maybe that have been declining in right. So I would email Justin or our data guy. I remember his exact job title, but who created queries and stuff, and a couple of days later you get an Excel file right? It wasn't super fast, and it's an expensive way to do it, right? Because his time is expensive, and what he's doing for me, he's not doing for somebody else. So how fast is it? If I ask the Microsoft Teams integration a question like that, how many policies do we have in New York that have homeowners but not auto? How fast can it create a query and get me an answer?
If the backend database that the enterprise has is fast enough, it can be in the order of seconds. But and in the worst case, in minutes. Right? So we want this to be interactive. So the whole goal is that very often your first question is not going to be the final answer, because you might say, okay, how many customers have home insurance but not auto insurance? You may get back a list of, let's say, 20,000 customers, and then you say, okay, that's too many. Okay, how many have an income of over $100,000 per year? And so you might do some more filtering and so on. So we want this to be interactive. So one of our key design decisions goals is to make responses ideally in less than a minute, and very often in less than 15 seconds. So yeah, that's our goal. That being said, sometimes this is caveated because we connect our system to enterprise databases, enterprise data warehouses. So partly it depends on how fast those databases and data warehouses are. But our goal is that this is interactive. That it's almost like you're chatting with a person or bot that's just giving you answers almost instantaneously.
Okay, I'm assuming that this is a given, but how do you handle the security piece, the access to data, right? So we probably don't want anybody in a 40,000 people company to be able to run queries on the entire data of the company.
Yep. Oh, indeed. So we have access control and authentication and authorization mechanisms built in. So you can specify rules like people of these roles only have access to these sets of data. And even within the data, they might only have access to parts of it. So you can say, for instance, that marketing users have only access to data, say, that came from Salesforce or from ad campaigns, whereas sales and distribution leads can have access to individual records about customers and their policies and so on. And furthermore, sales and distribution people in the Northeast only have access to customer records in the Northeast. So you could specify all those kinds of rules within a system, and it's going to make use of all that information to filter all the answers. So if you were not authorized to look at customers in New York, when you ask a question like how many customers in New York have home insurance or auto insurance, you will get back an answer saying, no, cannot answer this, because this has a filter which you're not allowed to look at.
Okay. So what is the minimum level of sophistication that my data needs to be at in order for you to be able to plug in? Like do we need to be at the data lake stage, or like I'm assuming that in the continuum between like state of the art, whatever state of the art is today, I wouldn't even know how to describe it, and access databases hidden on 10,000 different desktops. We need to be at a certain point for this to really be useful.
Right. That's a very good point. So where this starts getting useful is when enterprise has one or more enterprise level databases or data warehouses or data lakes. It doesn't have to be one, could be several, because most enterprises, in my experience, have many. So very often an enterprise might have a combination of, say, some on-prem databases and some on-cloud databases. So maybe they're using an Oracle database or a SQL Server database on-prem, but they're also starting to use, say, Snowflake or Redshift on the cloud. Some data might be one, some data might be other. So at that level, that's what that's a level we can start working in enterprise at, when they have one or more such database data warehouses. As long as they're confident that the data in each of the database data warehouses is reasonably good quality in terms of accuracy, that they can trust the data coming out of it, we can start using it. If they can't trust that data itself, then maybe we are a bit early or they're a bit early for our tool, because the first step would be to make sure that the data in any database that they're accessing has accurate information. But once they trust the data, and then our tool can come into play. So one of the features of our tool is that it's able to handle silo databases, which is often a problem in many enterprises, where The marketing team might have one database, the sales team might have another database, the operations team or the claims team might have another database, and that's totally fine. So we're able to handle databases. Depending on the question you ask, we will figure out which database might have the best chance of giving the right answer, and then send the query to that database, get back the answer, and then show it to the user.
Okay, can it work only with structured data, like only with like SQL accessible data, or?
Yeah. So okay. You focus on, you can say SQL or SQL-like data, so we can handle things like Excel sheets and even say CSV files, those kind of data sets. But as long as they are like structured, we don't do unstructured data like documents or PDFs, things like that.
So it's just a different game, basically.
Exactly.
Different problem set.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. How long? So let's say I'm a super regional carrier, and I've been working on getting all my data into a data lake, and right, having one version of the truth, so to speak, having a modern version of the data. How long does it take you to go from ink on the contract to my users actually having access to the tool set?
I would say usually 2 to 6 weeks is our time from system. You're saying yes, let's go ahead, to at least a version system that's able to answer questions on a subset of the data. So part of the reason for that is we have a fairly automated way where a system will automatically crawl the database and understand what data exists, what are the different tables, what are the different columns, what are the different relationships, and then already without too much effort, it can start answering some basic questions. And then we have a configuration interface, which is where our system is truly unique, I think, because each organization or each enterprise often has their own acronyms or abbreviations or terminology or metrics that they define.
we are infamous for that in insurance.
So that's a very good job. So even the definition of who is, say, an active customer or who is an expired or lapsed customer, I've seen some different definitions in different enterprises, right? But our system allows you a way to define that. So defining an active customer, says, example, is a customer who has at least one active policy, when active policy is something which has where the expiration date is in the future. So you can define those kinds of terms in a very formal manner in our tool, so that each time somebody asks the question like, how many active customers do I have today from New York who are about the age of 50 and so on, it's going to know exactly how to calculate and who's an active customer or decide who's an active customer. So that's where part of the work goes in defining the key business terms that business users might be using, and that's what most of the effort in those 2 to 6 weeks goes in defining how many those terms. Also defining, for instance, more business friendly representations of certain terms the database might have. So, for example, a simple example is a database might have a customer table. And we've seen cases where in the customer table, there's a gender column, but where there's a code for gender, where 0 means male, 1 means female, and 2 means not known. So nobody knows that except the database administrator or database monitor, because in his mind, he or she thought that representing the integer is going to be much more efficient than putting in a string there, for instance, right? So, but now when you're presenting this back to the user, I have to replace zeros by male and 1 by female, and so on. So all those data mapping can also be defined in our tool, so that when the results come back, they're going to be understandable to users, and people can start making sense of data immediately.
Okay. Do you have a couple of client success stories? Even better, they're from insurance. I understand if you have to anonymize the client. If you don't have to anonymize the client, I don't need you to, so feel free to use the name. But if you have to anonymize them, that's fine. But I'd love to hear a couple of stories of how it's made a difference in the life of the client.
Sure. So we do have an insurance company that's been using us for almost 8 months, and this is in Asia. So it started off with their customer lifecycle management team and the marketing team. So they would ask questions that would help them identify segments of customers, like who are high net worth customers, or who are customers who have multiple policies. And the key goals was to come up with some segmentation of their whole customer base that they could then target for campaigns, for doing either cross-sell or upsell, make sure they renew. So they had lots of questions around renewals and policy expirations and upsell opportunities and so on. So that's so start off with those kinds of questions with that team, and then eventually it also went into questions around policies and claims management and so on. So figuring out how many claims were made by a given user, which kind of different metrics on how profitable essentially each customer was based on their claims versus their coverage and premiums. So yes, that's one of our. This is one of the largest one of the largest insurance carriers in Southeast Asia. We also have customers in other in a variety of other industries too, in banking and retail, in telecom, different use cases in marketing and sales and operations. And it was interesting. We also had lots of pilots going on with companies around data sets, around around sales and distribution, around commissions. So, for instance, finding out which branch generated the most number of commissions in the last year compared to the previous year. So that's this is some of the which at least in the insurance space, none of them are referenceable yet. Hopefully, we will soon, but we have some referenceable customers in banking and telecommunications. Because finally, at the end of the day, this kind of system is useful across industries, especially those industries which are data intensive, but haven't yet figured out how best to use that data.
I'm curious. So since the company has been around for 6.5 years, I'm curious, did you make an attempt? Like, I would not be surprised if you had made an attempt at insurance early on and basically got into companies and got like, you guys are so unprepared that like, and now then insurtech happened and now they're much more prepared. I'm just wondering if such a thing happened or if you're just going after insurance now.
So specifically insurance, we're going after insurance now. So that being said, our first product was actually even more ambitious, you could say. It was more specifically targeted towards queries and analytics on streaming data, on real-time data, like IoT data and so on. And that's an even more niche topic for us. Even more companies who are unprepared. So we stepped back a bit from that focus on streaming and IoT data, even though it's technically very interesting, to just focus on much more different kinds of data. There's all kinds of static data, database data warehouses. So, no, but it's actually a common problem across enterprises. So even early customers happen to be telecommunications and banking, which are similar in spirit to insurance in the sense of being slightly having lots of challenges in data adoption and using data effectively. So yeah, so we had, I think, very similar experiences, but we got into insurance a bit more recently over the last year or so. We got into a couple of accelerators, the on-ramp accelerator, as well as the GIA accelerator, the global insurance accelerators. So that gave us a good exposure to the insurance industry specifically, lots of engagements and contacts, and we got a good sense of the lay of the land and figure out what the good use cases that we could go after.
Fantastic. I'm a big fan of GIA. I don't know the other accelerators particularly well, but GIA is very close to my heart. I'm an Iowa boy at heart. Spent 10 years in Iowa. So I can't remember. You were part of the cohort that did it virtually. You didn't have to spend 10 weeks in Des Moines in January, February kind of thing.
So we were actually part of this. So GIA has, I think, a couple of programs. One is that one, but there's also something called the InsurTech Days, where this happened actually in person in Iowa, in Des Moines. I think in September of this year.
Oh, that's a beautiful time of the year.
Yes, just before it's starting to get cold. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay, perfect. So for any InsurTech, very early stage InsurTech founders listening, take a look at GIA. It really is kind of a wonderful program. And GIA, the GIA, the accelerator side is willing to look at really early stage. Like a lot of the other accelerators want revenue and like a working product at some level. GIA is a lot more willing to like an idea on the back of a napkin. If it's a cool enough idea, they just might go for it. So anyway, so Anand, thank you for coming today. It's been a good, I don't know, almost couple months from since ITC. So thank you for the patience since I've been really busy with recording podcasts. I will tag you on LinkedIn when this goes out, and I'll include the URL for Unscrambl. And I look forward to see. Hopefully, we'll bring you back in a year or two, and you'll have a bunch of insurance clients, because I think for insurance, it definitely is an important thing to have good answers from our data. And it's something historically we have not had, given the general state of our technology pre 2015 kind of thing.
Indeed, no, thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, looking forward to staying in touch, and yeah, hopefully seeing you again in Vegas next year with.
I will absolutely be at ITC 2023, 2022. I don't even know what year it is, 2022. So I'll definitely see you there. Thank you. Have a great one.